Good Wednesday and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl in our West Bloomfield studios here at 89.3 Lakes FM and at Civic Center TV. We're joined by a group of community television and radio stations all throughout the Oakland County area, that including Birmingham Area Municipal Access in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the village of Franklin, as well as Civic Center TV in West Bloomfield, Keagle Harbor, Orchard Lake, and Sylvan Lake, and a family of radio stations as well, 89.3 Lakes FM here in West Bloomfield and the surrounding areas, 88.1 WBFH, the Biff out of Bloomfield Hills High School, under the leadership of station manager Ron Whittables, and WAHS 89.5 Avondale Community Radio, that out of Avondale High School. Keith Fraley, Marty Schaefer, getting us on the air each and every day in Auburn Hills and Pontiac and in surrounding areas. And we'll have their superintendent on today. Dr. James Schwartz will join us. A great lineup of guests today. Ernie Birchmeyer from the Michigan Farm Bureaus will join us. He's their manager for the Center of Commodity, Farm, and Industry Relations. Tonya Allen, big interview today with Tonya Allen, the chairperson of Governor Whitmer's Michigan Return to Learn Council. She'll talk about their plans for safely returning our kids to schools in the fall, and we'll ask her also about a Republican plan to reopen K-12 schools as well. We'll talk to Dr. James Schwartz, as I mentioned, from the Avondale schools. He's their superintendent. We'll talk about the Michigan Return to Learn Council's plans and ideas, as well as the Republican plans, and what needs to happen for Avondale kids to go back to school safely and effectively if there's a situation where they're in person and virtual or entirely virtual. We'll also speak with Mayor Deirdre Waterman, who will be addressing her city tomorrow in their State of the City address, and we'll talk more about the expanded COVID-19 testing that, of course, we talked about yesterday on the show with Pastor Coley Gracie and with Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter. And then to cap off the show, we'll talk with Ryan Taylor, the owner of Power Dance Company in West Bloomfield, about how do you run a dance studio and how do you have a lot of people in close proximity dancing with one another when they have to also maintain social distance. They have to have a mask on. A lot of questions with that, Ron. It'll be interesting to hear what they're doing in order to maintain the social distance, but also run effective classes and competitions.
I know that they're doing a lot of these things virtually, and how do you dance with someone virtually?
That's what I'm wondering. I don't know if it's a couple of people if it's a dance team and they have a situation where part of the dance team's in one location, part of the dance team's in the other location, and they're watching it on like a Zoom call or whatever the software they use in some sort of a gallery view, and the whole team's dancing in sync somehow, or if you have one person in one place and one person in another, or if it's just somehow synchronized between multiple places. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to hear.
Are you a dancer, Tyler?
I'm not a dancer. I'm very much not a dancer. I will dance only for the sake of comedy, because it is just that. It is a complete joke.
So you're not on TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok, no. No, not yet. I've considered it. I've considered it just for the jokes.
Because we want to see your moves on TikTok, Tyler.
No one needs to see that, Ronnie. Why punish an audience like that by having to watch me dance? There is a lot of good news out there that isn't including me dancing, and that is on CivicCenterTV.com. You go to our homepage, you click on coronavirus, and we have updated stories for you about COVID-19 and about all different kinds of stories throughout the local area on our website. That is updated on the daily. And we'll have all that information for you on our website. On the daily, our producer Jeff updates that every single morning before the show. Nearly 12,000 Michigan workers unemployed since May 1st are still awaiting their benefits. The state unemployment agency announced yesterday that it intends to clear that backlog of nearly 12,000 Michiganders who filed for jobless benefits before March 15th and May 1st by the 4th of July. The UIA says Michigan has paid $14.3 billion in jobless benefits to more than 2.1 million claimants since mid-March. UIA spokesman Jason Moon noted that most of the oldest unresolved claims of nearly 12,000 residents before May 1 are not related to the fraud probe. but many more still need to provide additional identification in order to receive benefits. Ronnie, that's quite possibly, other than COVID-19, the biggest story in the state of Michigan right now is 2 million plus people are seeking unemployment benefits. Hundreds of thousands of them have not received any benefits or have had their claims frozen and not been able to move forward on it because of these fraud claims. I checked this morning, 850 workers in the UIA right now that are actively working to resolve this issue. I think that July 4th goal is pretty lofty. We'll try to reach out to the UIA and get somebody on to ask them about how they plan to get that done so quickly when they have not been able to move the needle next to at all in several months. It'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, unemployment is such an issue across the country, but could you imagine you lost your job because of COVID and you're still waiting in limbo, but the bills don't stop coming? Right. You still have to pay your bills while you're still waiting for the government to figure out if they're going to pay you, not pay you. It is anytime you're dealing with the government and government agencies, a lot of good workers, a lot of good employees, but they're so backlogged and there's so much red tape that you have to get through that it slows the process down.
I would agree, and I think that you look at this situation, I don't think it's an incompetence problem by any means on the part of the UIA workers. There's 850 people that are dealing, at least in terms of the potentially fraudulent cases or questionable cases that are being marked as fraud. 850 people working on 540,000 plus cases. Right. You wouldn't ask 840 people to fill out to review 540,000 different files every single day and make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in a normal sense. You can't really expect that realistically from the UIA in this case either. So it's not an incompetence issue. It's just there's such an influx of cases, and there simply isn't enough people to put the focus needed on them, it seems, to get this done.
It must be mentally exhausting to go into work every single day and know you're never caught up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it has to be. It has to be. And it's not just them either. It's also the state representatives and state senators and their offices also. Every single one of them that we've talked to about this. We talked to Representative Kennedy. We've talked to Representative Carter, Senator Runstead about this, and every single one of them has said they have numerous people on their staff that are constantly taking these calls and working with their constituents and trying to move the needle forward as far as they can possibly get it, and even they are having trouble at some points getting in contact or getting any progress to be made with the Unemployment Insurance Agency.
Right. Oh.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation. So we've been reopening a lot of different industries also in the state of Michigan over the last couple of weeks. Gyms scheduled to reopen tomorrow, and we'll have more on that tomorrow. Also, we'll try to talk to a gym and send Erica Jones out and see just how that is going to happen. But don't get too excited just yet. Governor Gretchen Whitmer has said that she will not move the majority of the state into Phase 5 of her Michigan Safe Start plan this week. The governor confirmed that due to spikes in cases in other states and a few isolated breakouts in Michigan, we will not move into Phase 5 this week. Whitmer was quoted saying, quote, "My hope was to do it this week, but we are not going to do it this week. We are not in a position to do that yet. We've got to get more data because we are concerned." The governor hopes that the state will be able to move into Phase 5 by July 4th. That was something that she had said at her last press conference that was last week, and is maintaining that as her goal, July 4th, as the point where the remainder of the state will enter Phase 5. Much like Phase 4, which we're in right now, there are two regions, Region 6 and Region 8 in the Upper Peninsula and around the Traverse City area that are already in Phase 5. And that's kind of been the testing ground for the state, a low volume COVID-19 caseload in those areas. They've been able to move into other phases, test things out, give a good benchmark for the rest of the state. But it looks like because of these spikes and because of isolated incidents throughout the state, the governor taking extra caution to make sure she doesn't make the restrictions too loose, too quick, and then we have to pull back like many other states across the union have had to do, Ronnie.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're already seeing it, though, right?
Yeah.
When we go out, people aren't always wearing a mask. They're definitely not keeping their distance. And I will say, I even forget if you go to the store and they have the like one-way aisles, I always forget to look down to see, am I going the right way? Am I going the wrong way? So people are becoming more and more relaxed about this whole situation. I think the weather plays a big part in that as well. We have nicer weather. It was easier when we were staying inside because it was cold. You didn't want to be outside, and so it seemed to be easier to stay home. Plus, it was new, and we wanted to do our parts. Now, after months of that, and the weather is nice, people are getting outside, and you're starting to see them not be as compliant on some of these issues. I see people wearing masks, but the 6-foot rule has definitely been pretty relaxed, like at the playgrounds and places like that. Are you seeing that as well?
I am, and I think it's easier at this point in time, as we are, like you said, several months into this. We've seen the abundance of caution reduced because the caseload has reduced, and we have more people that are recovered, less new cases being diagnosed each day. It's easy for people to kind of relax and take the foot off the gas a little bit in terms of protecting themselves and the community, and that's why we're seeing a lot of these spikes in other states like Florida and definitely in Arizona and in some cases in California as well that have popped up, but also why we're probably going to see some minor spikes and more isolated spikes here in the state of Michigan in certain areas as well.
And of course, when we start to do more testing as well,
right,
the more tests you have, then the numbers are going to go up. I do still, every time I leave my home, I think, do I have a mask? Do I have my hand sanitizer? I mean, it's like the new norm. So as women, a lot of times we'd go out and you'd be like, oh, do I have my little pocketbook and my lipstick? Now it's like, do I have my lipstick, my mask, and my hand sanitizer? Yeah. I never go anywhere without hand sanitizer.
Yeah, I always have some masks with me, some hand sanitizer as well. And I've had a few instances where I've gone grocery shopping. I get out of the car and I start walking toward the grocery store. I get maybe 10, 12 feet away from my car and I stop, turn immediately around, and in my own internal monologue say, what are you doing? You don't have your mask on. You gotta grab your mask out of your car before you go in. So it's tough to remember still because you're still kind of getting in the mindset. And even me, I've been out and about during all of this since March because I've been working here doing the Megacast, and it's still something I'm learning to do just instinctively. You gotta have your mask when you go out.
How long do you think we're going to have to live like this? Will this be for the next year, do you think?
I think it's going to definitely be through the end of 2020 and possibly early on into 2021. We're still ways away, at least from all indications that we have, from any sort of a vaccine. And then you also have to take into account the distribution of that vaccine as well, which may not be something that happens immediately. So we have a lot more to talk about, a lot more stories online at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We'll review that more as the show goes on. But let's get to our first guest. There's a lot we have to talk about today on the Oakland County Megacast. And joining us to talk about a number of businesses reopening, restaurants began reopening in the last couple of weeks. Retail shops before that, and tomorrow, gyms in the local area will be reopening. And joining us now to talk about that as it relates to Birmingham and Bloomfield and the Birmingham and Bloomfield area is the president of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, Joe Bauman, joining us now in the Oakland County Megacast. Joe, thank you for being with us today. Okay, it looks like we have lost Joe Bauman. We're going to take a quick break and see what's going on with that, and we will be right back. This is the Oakland County Megacast. The Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations. Thank you for being with us.
Coronavirus has put us to the test. Now it's time to put it to the test. We've greatly expanded testing in Michigan. So people who think they may have COVID-19 with symptoms like fever, cough, and shortness of breath can get tested. And those without symptoms who work in public can now get tested, as they could carry the virus. Start by calling your healthcare provider or contacting a testing site near you. Learn more at michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonay Khaldun. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
We apologize for that, but welcome you back to the Oakland County Megacast. No, a lot of these businesses have had to be pivoting throughout this entire process, making sudden changes in order to keep things going. And the same goes for us here in the radio. It happens here and then. You have a sudden change and you just kind of roll with it. So we're going to be joined now by Joe Bauman. He's back with us from the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, on with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Okay, looks like he is not on the phone. Let's see if we have him on Zoom. Joe, do we have you with us?
You do.
Wonderful. Good. Okay. So it worked out with Zoom and put you up.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's good. It's good to see you. It's good to have you with us. We always love being able to see our guests. You can't see us, but you always see us on the replays on civiccentertv.com. So right to it. How are you? How's your team at the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber been doing?
We're plugging along day at a time. Thank you so much for having me on again to talk about what's happening in our communities. Stores are reopening and restaurants are reopening, and they're starting to feel a little bit of a return to normal, but we still have, significant challenges facing our small businesses.
And with all these reopenings that have been happening, we've seen restaurants reopen a couple weeks recently. Before that, it was retail, personal services last week, and now tomorrow, local gyms are going to be able to reopen, despite the governor's appeal of that ruling by a federal judge. How has the chamber been helping them prepare to open and have been helping them after they are open, for best safety practices, but also for best business practices as well?
Sure. So one of the things we did is we partnered with Oakland County in distributing PPE kits that the county made available. I think they had 10,000 that were distributed in all of the communities in Oakland County for small businesses. Everything they needed to kind of prepare to get back to business: touchless thermometers, masks, gloves, gowns, even X's to put on your floor for encouraging social distancing. The other thing that we did is really shared a lot of best practices with them from the World Health Organization and the CDC. And now that we are getting reopened, we're working with them on, the problem is that our businesses are facing several obstacles. Number one, there's still a segment of the population that's not comfortable coming into an enclosed space. And so we're encouraging our retailers and our restaurants to continue their curbside pickup programs and their online shopping programs to make sure to continue to get that segment of the business. Another challenge we see emerging is, regrettably, over the use of face masks. Many people, the majority of people, are still using masks when they're in an enclosed space, but some aren't, and it's causing conflict among the customers and with the shopkeepers and the restaurants. So what we're telling our restaurants is, if you have a policy that you require people wear masks, you just politely inform your customers as they're coming in if they're not wearing them. But you never want the situation to escalate. The other challenge is, they're trying to make up for a lot of lost revenue. So it's very difficult for a retailer or a restaurant to turn away business because someone's not wearing a mask. On the other hand, you have people who will go into a store or they'll go into a restaurant, they'll be wearing a mask, they'll see people who aren't wearing a mask, and that makes them uncomfortable. Well, instead of getting into an argument over the wearing of masks, which can quickly escalate, what we encourage our customers to do, and the consumers and the public, is if you go into one of your favorite stores or restaurants, and if they have a posted policy that face coverings must be worn, and if there are people in there that aren't, we suggest that you just kindly ask to see the manager, and you explain to the manager that because some of the other customers are not following the guidelines, you're not comfortable being in their place of business, and you're not going to return until they can guarantee that they're enforcing their own policy. So it's it's hard to believe that, wearing masks has become a political issue as well as a health issue. But unfortunately, that's where we're at. So we just ask everyone to be patient, be kind, and be understanding.
And I think that's the least that you can that these businesses can do for that these patrons can do for these businesses, and the least that the businesses can ask for them, because you do have to have that balance where you are balancing, I have to get back in the business and I have to hopefully be able to kickstart economically and financially what we're bringing back in, but also have to keep everybody safe, including my staff, including my team, including the facilities. And that's going to require enforcing that people are coming into to our facilities, coming into our shops, in our restaurants, whatever it may be, and following those regulations, because it is what's keeping people safe. And consequently, there's another choice that businesses are making as well as they prepare for that and for other scenarios, which is we're able to open today. But do we open today, or do we wait a few days? Do we wait a week? Do we wait 2 weeks and get everything perfected? In Birmingham and Bloomfield, within your Chamber of Commerce, are you seeing one way happening more than another, immediate versus waiting to reopen? And what are some of the reasons behind businesses doing one versus the other?
I would say that the majority of businesses have reopened in some form or fashion. But we do have restaurants, for instance, that have not opened yet. And what we're hearing, there's one of two reasons. Either they don't have sufficient staff to reopen, they're still trying to hire their people back, or they don't feel that they've got necessary and adequate safety precautions in place to allow people back into their places of business. Small business owners, they bear a huge responsibility. They have to take care of their employees, and they have to, they're charged with making sure that they protect the safety and health of their employees. And again, if you have people coming into your store and they're not following your requirements of wearing face coverings, then that's going to make the employees very uncomfortable. And maybe the employers are going to say, I'm not comfortable, so I'm not coming back to work. So it's not about protecting yourself. That's the thing. You don't wear a face covering mostly to protect yourself. You're doing it to be kind and courteous and considerate of others around you. And I think that message is starting to get lost a little bit.
It definitely is. And hopefully as time goes on and people realize just how much of an impact these safety measures have, that they'll be a little bit more compliant. And we heard it earlier. We heard it in previous episodes of the show that it's not just the guidelines that were put in place by the governor, by the county, by these local municipalities that made Michigan one of those 3 states that was on track as of the last press conference with the governor to contain the virus. It was the compliance of the people to those regulations, to those often harsh and sometimes very stringent regulations that people didn't agree with. Their compliance amongst the population is what let that go on. And so encouraging that is the best thing that we can do. But until that happens, you got to maintain the social distance. You got to encourage that within your businesses. And a lot of these municipalities in Oakland County are doing their part as well to lift restrictions and to put new regulations in place, temporary or permanent, to help businesses expand. And a lot of times it's outdoors, on the sidewalks, even in some streets and parking areas, in order to allow greater space so more people can shop at a store at one time instead of only limiting them to 50% capacity. In the communities within your chamber that are doing that, are you seeing a boom in business? Is that helping these local businesses come back strong?
Absolutely. I think whether it's real or even if it's just psychological, I think people feel more comfortable when they're outdoors, when they're not in a confined space. So whatever, our local municipalities can do to encourage more use of outdoor space for both retail and restaurants especially, that's what we're encouraging them to do. And we're seeing that happening in all of our communities. So, if you walk down some of the streets in downtown Birmingham, you're going to see a whole bunch of new outdoor dining platforms. There's even talk about turning Shane Park into a kind of a super cafe where individual restaurants could have a portion of the park for outdoor seating. This is a really serious issue that needs bold steps and bold solutions. This is not the time to study an issue for 6 months to determine whether you can relax this standard or relax this ordinance. In order for our small businesses, our restaurants to survive, we need some bold leadership, and fortunately we're seeing it. Starting with Oakland County, I think they've done an amazing job with the money they're making available to small businesses in the form of grants, the PPE kits, the fact that now if you're an Oakland County resident, you can get tested for COVID for free. You don't have to have a prescription. You don't have to, have any symptoms. You can just go and get tested. So it's very gratifying to see that our leaders are really leading.
Joe Bauman with us on the Oakland County Megacast. He is the president of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. And it just so happens I want to give a big thank you to you, Joe, and to Kelly and your entire team for joining us today as our Facebook partner. We are live on the Facebook page of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce on today's program, in addition to all of our other community television and radio stations. So, Joe, these companies, these businesses locally have had to pivot. They've had to make changes. They've had to put new regulations in place for safety reasons or even just for efficiency reasons, given those safety precautions. Do you see some of those changes sticking after this is all done, being permanent? How do you believe that the changes that they've had to make now and those innovations that they have made in the process of making those changes will stick and will impact these businesses going forward when we're out of this pandemic?
Well, I think for retailers, the biggest thing is it forced everyone to become an online retailer, right? The only way you could conduct any kind of sales was over the internet. It's no secret that our bricks and mortar retailers have been hurt badly by internet commerce from, mega companies. And so what this has done, it's given them an opportunity to set up their own little internet stores and their own online presence. And I think that will continue to help them going forward because, there are a segment of the population that they just prefer the convenience of ordering something online and having it shipped to them. Well, the best way to combat, somebody who's not from the community and not supporting the community in their business operation is to have your own presence. So I think you're going to see that that's going to be a permanent part of every retail operation, I think, going forward. And then with restaurants, again, I think, this forced every restaurant to become a carryout restaurant. For many, it worked. For some, it didn't because of their various business models. But again, going forward, I think you're going to see these family-style meals that had been put together where you could go and pick it up and serve it to your family. I think you're going to see that continue to be part of the restaurant scene as well. And then hopefully there'll be such a positive experience with expanding outdoor dining opportunities that our communities will keep the looser standards and allow that to be a regular part of the dining experience as well going forward.
In terms of momentum, we've seen some excitement, or at least more people out on the streets, out on the town, going around the shops and restaurants because they're reopened and they've been cooped up in their homes for all this time during the pandemic. They want to get back out. Have these businesses locally seen their business improve and have some momentum gained? And if so, what suggestions does your team at the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce have for them to maintain that momentum so they can really kickstart their business financially after the hit that they've taken?
Well, I think definitely foot traffic, especially in our downtown areas, has picked up. No question about it. You are seeing more people out and about walking around. A lot of offices still have their employees working remotely, so that's kind of hurting the lunch crowd for restaurants. Across the board, they're just not seeing the numbers that they used to. But again, I think it's because, another side of this is a lot of companies realize that their workforce can be very efficient and very effective working remotely. And so that's another whole thing that's going to be debated going forward as to how much physical space do you really need? And do you need to have everybody together in a confined space, or can you let people work independently and remotely? But we need to get more critical mass. We need more people to come into our communities and into our stores and into our restaurants. And the best way to do that is through education and information. We encourage all of our members to have right on their websites and use through their social media exactly what their safety policies and precautions are. What is the experience going to be when you come into my store, come into the restaurant? So there's no surprises. So somebody doesn't come in and go, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. And then again, a little kindness can go a long way. If you like what your store has done or your restaurant in terms of social distancing, reduced capacity, wearing the face masks, thank them. Say thank you for making me feel safe, and thank you for worrying about my safety, instead of having these altercations that we're all hearing about. So it's all about making people feel comfortable that you are providing a safe and secure environment for them to shop, eat, play.
Joe Bauman, the president of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, joining us this morning on the Oakland County Megacast. We talk about momentum. We talk about keeping that kickstart going strong. Previously, the Small Business Association of Michigan had some pretty bleak predictions based on their polling of small businesses across the state in terms of what they believe they'll be able to do in terms of getting their some part of the lost sales from the pandemic back, or if they think they're going, and definitely in terms of if they think they're going to survive post-pandemic altogether. Reasons for optimism now, or are you still calling for caution, or a little bit of both? What's your forecast of the business community going forward?
Well, there's a reason why, a beautiful sunny day is called the Chamber of Commerce Day. We're always optimistic, and we want to be. I think really a lot is going to depend on what happens come this fall. I think we are seeing some momentum. We are seeing people return. We are seeing people feeling more comfortable in being out as long as all these safety measures are being taken into effect. But, I don't know if small businesses would be able to survive a second total shutdown like we saw in March and April and May, frankly. It was a huge financial hit for these businesses. And especially, restaurants and retailers, they work on a pretty thin margin to start with. And they just don't have the reserves to carry them through another 3-month shutdown. So, we're hopeful that that's not going to happen. We're hopeful that the measures that our state did take in trying to contain the virus are going to pay off in the long run, and we're going to avoid that second wave or that second spike. But we're just going to have to wait and see. There are a lot of unknowns continuing, and, you just have to take it a week at a time.
Joe, anything else before we let you go for the day?
So I do want to mention that if you are a small business owner in Oakland County, the Oakland County Commission is scheduled to vote tomorrow on an additional $30 million Small Business Stabilization Fund grant program. The application may be available as early as Friday. So if you are a small business and if you didn't participate in either phase 1 or phase 2, you're going to have another opportunity to try to receive a stabilization grant and help you with your cash flow. So just keep an eye on the county website. And of course, we'll have all the information posted on our website and through our social media as soon as we get an opportunity to do so.
Well, Joe, thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you for partnering with us on Facebook as well.
Thanks for having us, and we're pleased to host anytime.
Anytime. Thank you very much. Joe Bauman, the president of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how has the pandemic affected farmers, agriculture, our food supply chain, and what does that mean for the future. You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will rejoin you after this short break.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Parks COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl in the West Bloomfield studios of our flagship station, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. We're also joined on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 88.1 WBFH, the Biff out of Bloomfield Hills, and WAHS 89.5 Avondale Community Radio, a service of Avondale Schools. And talk with Joe Bauman about the way that the pandemic has impacted local small businesses, restaurants, retailers, and so on, but it also impacts the supply chain, and definitely that's the case with food distribution. And joining us now to talk about that and many other issues is the manager of the Center for Commodity, Farm, and Industry Relations at the Michigan Farm Bureau. His name is Ernie Birchmeyer, and he joins us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Mr. Birchmeyer, thank you for being with us.
Good morning. It's great to be with you.
How are you? How's your team?
Doing great. It's a beautiful morning across Michigan, and our farmers across the state are out farming and taking care of the livestock, taking care of the crops that are in the field. We are in the middle of strawberry harvest in Michigan, and some of our fresh fruits and vegetables and those commodities are starting to kick in to high gear. So it's a great time to be a part of Michigan agriculture.
And it's good to hear that some of those common crops that we all love in the summer, those strawberries and so on, are in production and are getting ready to be harvested. We had a stay-at-home industry shut down during this pandemic, but the food supply chain had to keep going. It's absolutely critical. How is that done during the bulk of the pandemic, and how is it done safely?
Sure. Well, our farmers are farming today just like they did prior to COVID-19 and just like they'll do after COVID-19. And when the pandemic hit, the governor included agriculture as one of the critical infrastructures in the state of Michigan, allowing our food supply industry, food production industry to continue functioning and operating. Obviously, that is very critical. Michigan is second in diversity in terms of the number of commodities that we produce, second only to California. And our farmers, as I said, produce and grow those on a daily basis. But it's imperative that the food processing and distribution industry kept up at the same time. And there were some challenges along the way due to the pandemic. We did have some disruptions in food processing that caused some concerns at the farm level in terms of lower commodity prices. But as we worked through the pandemic and worked those kinks out, things seem to be back fairly close to normal in terms of those food processing and distribution channels. Keep in mind, as I said, though, the food production end of it did not quit. Prior to COVID-19, 51% of the meals were consumed outside of the household. And your previous guest talked about the impact that has had on COVID-19 has had on restaurants and food service industries. And when all of that came to a screeching halt, that then had an impact on where the food was being processed, how it was being processed, and how it was being distributed. Because we don't package and process food the same for the restaurant and food service industry, schools, universities, even sporting events, as we do for the retail grocery store level. So there were some kinks that needed to be ironed out, but things seem to be moving more smoothly now. Those markets are coming back in the restaurant industry, so that is all helping.
So, Ernie, real quick, this is Ronnie. I want to ask you, what changes will be implemented from here on out? What lessons did you learn on that supply chain distribution issue?
Sure. I think that's a policy debate that probably needs to take place across the countryside, both at the state and federal level in terms of our food processing and distribution industry. And I think some of those changes or some of those discussions are happening now, and they're beginning to happen. We have seen an increase in terms of demand for small and local processors, and especially in the meatpacking industry. Those processors in Michigan are booked up in some instances until next year. And is there a need for more of those? And if there is a need for more of them, what are the regulatory burdens and the cost of operations that are holding them back from putting in new facilities across the state? So I think that's one discussion that will happen. Anytime you have a system that needs to be built or rebuilt or enhanced, there are costs that are associated with it, and how do we pay for those? So I think that's one discussion that certainly is going to take place. Our food industry has changed dramatically over the years, and it never hurts to sit down and talk about our changes needed. Are there things we can do better to help make the opportunities better for our consumers across Michigan, the United States, and really outside of our country?
In terms of the individual farmer also, because the collective farming and agricultural industry has maintained the food supply chain relatively well to what you have said throughout this pandemic. But individual farmers, many of them do struggle in normal times. Financially, a lot of our businesses in our economy have taken a big hit. Are individual farmers doing okay?
It's been a challenge. We saw commodity prices drop anywhere from 30 to 50% in terms of some commodities during March, April, and May as we went through market disruption and tried to work our way through the COVID-19 pandemic. The dairy industry has been very challenged. Some of the dairy pay prices this year were near record lows in terms of their cost of production and then what they were getting paid for the milk. When you take, in dairy, for instance, when you take the amount of cheese out of the equation that was consumed at restaurants and food service establishments across the country, that puts a real pinch on how and where some of that product can be moved to. So there was a direct impact on what the farmers were then paid for those commodities, because agriculture in general is a price taker and not a price maker. Our farmers get paid on what the market is willing to bear on that particular day for that particular commodity versus the manufacturer of a product that can put a price on it and then offer it to the consumer. So we did see a dramatic decrease in many instances, and that took a financial toll on farm operations. As I said, dairy was down 40 to 50%. Our pork producers across the state saw 35 to 40%. Even 50% decline in their prices. Similar in the beef cattle industry. Our corn farmers took about a 30% hit because our ethanol industry was impacted because people weren't driving as much. So there was a direct impact there as well. Hopefully there's an opportunity over the next 6 or 8 months to recover from that as our market prices have rebounded as demand has started to pick back up.
Joining us on the Oakland County Megacast is Ernie Birchmeyer. He's the manager of the Center for Commodity Farm and Industry Relations at the Michigan Farm Bureau, talking about how the industry has been affected by the pandemic and what's been going on in terms of the supply chain. So you talk about food shortages to some extent, and you mentioned that production of products such as cheese and distribution of products such as cheese and other dairy products has seen a reduction, and there is less of a supply of that. In terms of distribution, in grocery stores, that may result in seeing higher prices. The demand stays the same, the supply is lower. That's simple economics. But in terms of distribution and priority, is there anything that's set in place by farmers, by the agricultural industry, by distribution, in terms of where these need to go first? You mentioned even earlier, 51% of people in the state of Michigan before this were getting the majority of their meals outside of the home. Is there a priority for where these products would maybe go first in the supply chain before they go to a place like a grocery store?
Sure. I want to back up just a bit and make sure we provide clarity on the production side of it. We did not have any shortages in production. Okay. In fact, production at the farm level remained consistent with what it was prior to COVID-19 and similar to where we are now. So production at the farm level itself remained very, very consistent. It was a challenge in the processing and distribution industry. And from a distribution industry, it's where the market is demanding that product on any particular day. Certainly, the grocery stores were a priority as folks shifted from purchasing food outside of the home, at the restaurant and food service level, to the retail level. So that's why you saw consumption increase and buying power increase at the grocery store for products like milk, because that's where all of our products to be consumed in the household were coming from, for the most part, was at the retail grocery store level. So those obviously were a priority area for the distributors to get that product to, so that our consumers could continue buying the products that they need on a daily basis in their households to feed their families. So obviously that's important. And it's a supply and demand issue. Those that were demanding it, certainly the product continued to roll. Although, again, we saw a shift in our buying from outside of the grocery store or included with the grocery store to 100% inside the grocery store. So it was a shift in demand that we realized.
Ernie Birchmeyer with us from the Michigan Farmers Bureau on the Oakland County Megacast on a family of stations throughout the local area. In terms of safety regulations, you mentioned before earlier on in the interview, right at the beginning, that safety was always paramount in the food distribution industry and the food production industry and agriculture, even before the pandemic. Now things are still a little different. While safety before is not the same as safety right now, what new regulations maybe are in place for farmers, for distributors, and so on, in order to maintain safety from COVID-19 and the entire process of getting the food from the food or livestock from the farm to the consumer?
Sure. Many of our processing plants have implemented social distancing measures inside those plants, spread the workers out more, and are utilizing personal protection equipment, PPE, a whole lot more than they did in the past because of the requirements that COVID-19 brought about. Certainly, worker safety is of utmost importance. If we don't have workers helping to process and distribute the food, we can't keep the retail grocery stores filled. So worker safety is critically important. And those plants have implemented a number of measures, as I said, including the utilization of personal protection equipment, social distancing measures, spreading people out, and some separation units within those plants as needed. Along with that, our farm operations across the state, if they've got a large number of employers working, whether they're harvesting fresh fruits and vegetables or helping to sort and process those, they are now implementing those social distancing measures and utilizing additional protection equipment on those operations as well. So we're all taking this very seriously because it's imperative that we have a safe, wholesome, abundant, and affordable food supply for our consumers. So those measures are being taken very seriously as we all work together to protect our workers and supply a great food supply for our consumers.
Ernie Birchmeyer, the manager for the Center for Commodity, Farm, and Industry Relations at the Michigan Farm Bureau. Before I let you go, a couple more questions for you. Any lasting impacts that the COVID-19 pandemic has had, either through lessons, through necessary changes, or just in a blanket statement, any lasting impacts that this pandemic will have on the agricultural industry and the farming industry in Michigan?
Well, I think that remains to be seen, but I do think we will continue to have discussions about, our food industry, our food distribution industry, maybe the consolidation of where the industry has gotten to, and do we need to take a look at that? And I think those are good policy discussions, as I stated earlier, that need to happen on an ongoing basis. The more that we can take the opportunity to look at what we're doing, is it still working, and is there a way to do it better in the future? We are all better off, regardless of the business and industry that we are in. Like our farmers do on a daily basis, they continue to operate and change and try to run their farms more efficiently and try to always produce something even better than what they're doing now for our consumers. We all need to take that approach to what we're doing today doesn't always have to be the right answer. There are opportunities in the long run to potentially make things even better. So to me, the lasting impression is that we all need to continue to operate and work, but try to find ways to do better. And if we need to make adjustments, make those adjustments that are best for not only our farm operations, but for our consumers, because ultimately they are the ones that are most important, and we're all in this together.
Ernie, thank you very much for being with us today. We enjoyed having you on.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hope you all have a great day. And if folks out there get a chance, stop by one of the local farm markets, take the opportunity to visit with the farmer, find out firsthand what they do on their operations on a daily basis to bring that great nutrition to the consumers every day.
Ernie Birchmeyer from the Michigan Farm Bureau with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We thank him for being with us today. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to transition into another major issue in the state of Michigan. How do we get our kids back into schools safely in the fall? What is that going to look like? How is that going to impact their ability to learn effectively? And are our schools going to have the funding necessary to do so effectively without cutting programs and other necessary assets? You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will be back shortly.
Coronavirus has put us to the test. Now it's time to put it to the test. We've greatly expanded testing in Michigan. So people who think they may have COVID-19 with symptoms like fever, cough, and shortness of breath can get tested. And those without symptoms who work in public can now get tested, as they could carry the virus. Start by calling your healthcare provider or contacting a testing site near you. Learn more at michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl on Civic Center TV, on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, both on Comcast Channel 15 and on AT&T Channel 99. We're also on 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, and WAHS 89.5 Avondale Community Radio, the Oakland County Megacast, your home for local news and information on the COVID-19 pandemic and other major stories happening daily throughout the Oakland County area, covering a large portion of our community on our family of TV and radio stations. Also online on civiccentertv.com/watch-live. Watch us live and in high definition, or join us on our Facebook partner every day. And today our Facebook partner is the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce. And a major issue right now in the state of Michigan, Ronnie, is how are we going to get our kids back into schools efficiently, effectively, definitely safely, and are our schools going to be able to effectively educate our kids while also maintaining fiscal responsibility, given the fact that there's impending cuts that may be highly severe?
One of the issues, too, is we've been seeing classroom sizes grow through the years. So now, are we going to have to cut those classrooms and, fewer students? How is that going to work? So that might actually be a positive that comes out of this.
It's very possible. We'll see what happens as this process goes on. Still a lot of time left in front of us before the school year begins in the fall, and still a little bit of time left before that July 1st deadline for these schools to get their fiscal year 2021 budgets in and set, and hopefully their financial hit for 2020 fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021 will not be as severe as it has previously been expected. So now, joining us on the program, my apologies, that was the wrong fader to use. Joining us now on the program to talk about just that is the chairperson of the Michigan Return to Learn Council and also the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation. Her name is Tonya Allen, joining us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Tonya, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tyler. I appreciate it.
We appreciate having you on. How are you? How are your council members doing?
We are good. We're very busy, and as you can imagine, we are feeling quite a bit of anxiety of trying to get so many competing issues addressed. But we're standing by the mantra that we want to deliver a plan to the governor that is focused on science, safety, and our students.
And that's absolutely what you have to do. You have to put the child first in terms of educating kids in our state. And And for those who are maybe not familiar, they haven't been watching the governor's press conferences, they haven't been paying attention to the news, they don't know what's going on. What is the Michigan Return to Learn Council? What is its purposes? What are its goals? And what is it currently working on in terms of plans for the fall?
Oh, great. Thank you. That's a great question. As many of your viewers know, the schools were closed abruptly last school year around April. And so basically what we're attempting to do is to present a set of recommendations to the governor that articulates the requirements for schools, as well as recommendations on how they can open schools and how they can do it safely, so that the students are safe, the educators are safe, and that we can keep our economy going. The worst thing that we could ever do is to open up schools and have any kind of outbreak that actually requires us to close schools, because we all know that we depend on our schools. They have an outsized impact on our public health issues, on our economy, and on how we come back to normal after this, in the process of still being in a pandemic.
Being in school and having that in-person experience, interacting with your teacher, definitely, and more, almost as importantly, if not more importantly, those social interactions you have with your fellow students is absolutely critical to the education of our children. And there may be an opportunity to have kids in the school in the fall, especially if we continue on the path that we're on right now in terms of COVID-19 safety and maintaining those social distancing guidelines and so on. But there may also be a situation where a lot of these kids are not going to be able to be in school, either because their parents would prefer them not to be, or because the safety regulations have to be more severe because things don't maintain on as optimistic and pleasant of a path. Is there something in place that the council's working on, that your partnerships with the school districts and leadership throughout the state are working on, to kind of bridge that situation and keep social interaction as critical to the plan, whether it be virtual or in person, for the fall semester?
Yeah, so we are it's really critical that we create the conditions that are going to be useful for our young people. And I know you've heard this before, and we talk about it as social distancing, but really what we're thinking about is it's physical distancing, and how do we create the kind of social environments that are going to be good for our young people. We know that school teaches us more than just the academic topics. It teaches us how to be present, how to read emotions, how to work with other people, all of those things that are necessary for life and for work. And so we're trying to create recommendations that is responsive to the science, but also is responsive to the social emotional needs and the developmental needs of students as well. So we are weighing that deeply, of trying to bring forth that. And what I would say to you, if all things go the way that they're planned, the governor is projecting that we will be in phase 5 of the Michigan Safe Start plan in July, and we want to keep it that way so that we know with confidence that our school buildings can be open. And the recommendations that this advisory council will be giving to the governor are really designed to make sure that we can not only open these schools, but they can stay open, that we have the right protocols in place, the right safety measures that would ensure that we won't have any disruption to school. And then the last question I think you asked, and is an important question, is if families don't feel comfortable sending their kids, will education be available to them? And so there are many districts that are working on dual plans to offer both remote learning as well as in-person learning. We think that every district in our state has to be ready to make that pivot, so that it's no longer, we did it last time based on an emergency. This time there should be no emergency, and there should not be a crisis if we had to make such a decision, because we're prepared and we're ready for that. And districts are working on these questions right now, and they're working through these issues through the summer to make sure that we can deliver high quality education in our state for every single student, wherever you might live and whatever the public health circumstances are.
Just a point of clarification for those that aren't familiar, and even for those that maybe are familiar. Your council is making recommendations to the governor on how to best reopen school K-12 schools come the fall semester. The governor will then take in those suggestions and release a plan mandated to the schools that are then able to utilize those plans and follow those guidelines, but also make their own plans specifically as well on top of that.
Right. So we are going to give broad guidelines and about requirements and recommendations. But each of these plans have to be owned by the individual school district. We need those school districts, those teachers to own the plans and to implement them so that they're responsive to what is happening in their local communities, and they're listening to their parents and their students as well. I think one of the things that the governor is attempting to do with this is to bring the best science and knowledge we know from across the country as well as across the world when it comes to school opening. We want to bring that to Michigan. And then this advisory council is really bringing local context, making sure this is practical and realistic for school districts. Considering you talked this issue up at the beginning about school budgets and the potential for decreases, we want to make sure that we're not putting forth any recommendations that the state and school district can't afford to make. So it has to have that practicality to it. And so we want to bring this best practice as well as local context, meaning Michigan, like statewide context and then local context in these regional areas in that school district so that we can present the best plan and the best practices forward. And we're committed to doing that. We're committed to supporting educators in this moment, but we have to abide by the public health mandates that are before us.
Tonya, one of the issues that really was exposed during this pandemic is the divide within our communities. There are a lot of kids that don't have access to the internet. They don't have computers at home. The libraries were shut down, so they couldn't go get on the computers at a library or someplace like that. Will your plan address that divide as well?
So our plan is designed to really help lift up and to avoid any inequities. Now, there are things like the legislature just passed a budget supplement that allowed for additional resources for technology devices and connectivity. It's not enough to cover the entire state, but we do have to figure out how to get those resources into the places where there's the greatest need. And you even talked about this at the top of the session about like these hidden opportunities. Is this a hidden opportunity that pushes us towards smaller class sizes, which we know are important for students? And I think this might be a hidden opportunity too. We need to close that last mile when it comes to connectivity. There are so many communities in our state, particularly in rural areas, where there isn't that level of connectivity. And surprisingly, we don't have it in our largest urban areas as well. And so we have to figure out how to solve for that. And we also have to figure out how to get devices. I think it's going to require a state to play a role in that, which they're putting resources there. It's also, and there are going to be more budget supplements and discussions coming forward. So I'm expecting to hear more about that from our legislators. But it also is going to require our districts to lean in on this too and to make some sacrifices to try and get those costs covered. And then we have community. So we have the private sector, be it philanthropy, the nonprofits, or business. We are all going to have to pull together to be able to deal with these inequities. Now, ultimately, that's just the short term while we're in the middle of the pandemic. But we know that right now in our state, we have inequitable funding systems for schools, period. And this has to be the imperative, in my opinion, for us to solve that. We got to figure out how we make sure that the districts that have the greatest disadvantages or the districts and students who have the greatest need, that they get those resources. And that's sometimes a hard issue to wrestle with, but we can do it. We've seen the modeling on this issue, and we got to make sure that we don't come out of this pandemic with a lost decade in the same way we did with the Great Recession. And it's time for us to prioritize our future. And we know that is our children. We got to get them prepared because they're going to create a robust and booming economy when they enter into it that will allow our state to be successful and prosperous.
Tonya Allen, the chairperson of the Michigan Return to Learn Council and the president of the CEO of the Skillman Foundation with us. We're going to take a quick pause for station identification. Keep us legal with the FCC. You are listening to 89.3 WBLD, Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake. 88.1 WBFH, Bloomfield Hills, that's the BIF, out of the Bloomfield Hills School District, and WAHS 89.5, Avondale Community Radio, that is WAHS Auburn Hills, a service of the Avondale School District. And Tonya Allen, you talked to us about the technology gap being something that has to be bridged as best as possible. You and Ronnie both mentioned that. A great article that was posted, I believe, last night from Bridge, Michigan. Give some details on that. Give some statistics from this article. Quote, more than a third of students in districts from rural southern Michigan to Flint to the Upper Peninsula lacked digital access. That was in 2018. In dozens more districts, more than a fifth of students lacked access, either lacking internet access or not having a computer device at home. And 37% of students in Flint community schools had no digital access. 36% in Walden school area schools. 34% in Watersmeet Township School District. And consequently, on the other side, in wealthier suburban school districts like in Grand Rapids, Forest Hills Public Schools, and in the Bloomfield Hills School Districts, both of those, the numbers, 99% access. So that is something that I'm glad to hear, and I'm sure many are going to be glad to hear, is something that the Return to Learn Council and even the state legislature is also addressing, because it's going to be critical, especially if there is distance learning and in-person learning hybrids going forward, or God forbid we have a situation where we have a second wave and it's going to be all virtual once again. It's going to be absolutely critical that we have resources on top of a plan for our students.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the issue is like we are treating computers today and connectivity like they are supplementary, and they're as critical to a young person's education as a book and a pen. We need to make sure that these are tools that are in our schools for the pandemic so that we can manage that with remote learning, but we're going to need it in general. So one of the big issues that you probably heard about is what they call the COVID slide, which means that our students already lost a third of their school year just by schools closing early. And many people believe that they will not retain as much of their education of what they learn, which is they're projecting that students will only retain 70%. Now, when you add that in combination with summer slide, which is particularly egregious when it comes to children who maybe live in high poverty areas, and that's where they lose a lot of that learning because it's not being reinforced during the summer. So we might see some students who have lost up to 6 months of a school year. And if we don't have a strong remediation plan and support, and we know that technology can provide that, as well as good teaching with a teacher in the classroom, but that is it can be reinforced through technology. We need to do that because we have to close the gap. Not just open up the schools, but how do we close the gap so that this gap isn't lingering for the long term for our students throughout their academic careers?
For those interested, for those maybe even concerned with the Return to Learn Council, who is on the council? Who is made up of this? Who are these people that are making these suggestions that will ultimately lead to a decision from the governor? I'm sure parents are very curious to know that hopefully this plan is in good hands.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So there are lots of Michiganders who are interested in this, so much so that we had 1,800 people apply for this council. So it's, and we only selected 25. You have a higher chance of getting in Harvard than you did to get on this council. But I would tell you, it is made up of people who are parents, people who are educators, from classroom teachers, to leaders who are in school districts who are running the operations, to superintendents, from principals. We have a student on our commission. We also have public health officials. So people who are working in hospital, epidemiologists, people who work at our local health departments. We also have a set of subcommittees that engage even more people in this. We looked at racial diversity, geographic diversity, age diversity, political diversity. So we wanted to cover the full spectrum to make sure that we were listening to each other across the state and understanding that there are different circumstances. It's very different in a particular community where you may only have 600 kids in your full district and you don't have any COVID cases versus being in a school district where you have 100,000 children in that region. And you might have, lots of cases and you could have as many as 40 school districts. So we know that our state is very diverse. And so this group of people reflect that diversity and they're at the top of their game. Each of them are thinking very thoughtfully about this issue. They're spending lots of time on it. We're debating the tough issues and we're trying to make, again, like I said at the beginning of this, decisions based on science, safety, and our students. Those are the three things that we hold constantly in the center of these recommendations that we'll be sending to the governor. And then we hope will be executed and implemented throughout our state in a way that is supportive to our school districts, not harmful.
Tonya Allen with us, the chairperson of the Michigan Return to Learn Council, also the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation. Just a couple more minutes with you, Tonya, before we have to let you go. It was reported today by David Eggert of the Associated Press that Michigan's legislator Republicans proposed a $1.3 billion plan to help K-12 schools reopen. Just a brief summary of that plan. It would include one-time funding, including an $800 per pupil increase to address new costs related to COVID-19. That from $3 billion in federal relief. Teachers would receive a $500 bonus. And there is some upset regarding this Republican plan, which would also require in-person K through 5 education at the minimum, refining attendance to allow for online learning and reduce the number of snow days necessarily being taken. The governor's office has reacted to this. Spokeswoman Tiffany Brown, it's called it, quote, disheartening, and said the plan is, quote, a copy of the proposal from the Great Lakes Education Project, a school of choice co-op founded years ago by U.S. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. Have you had a chance to look at that plan? Do you understand what maybe is involved in that? What is your reaction to this plan being released? And does that at all, do you believe, interfere with what the Return to Learn Council is currently operating on?
Yeah, I have had an opportunity to look at it, and my view on it is simple. I told you 1,800 people applied that wanted to have their voices on this. I believe that Republican legislators wanted their voices included too. Glad to have their input, their thinking. We are taking that in account. We'll make sure it's in the plan. Their production is a one-page kind of high-level view on this. And what we're doing is going a lot deeper into this because we know that we have to give our schools some specific direction because that's what they're asking for. That's what the educators on this commission are suggesting to us. We're so grateful that the legislature believes and understands that we have to increase our spending in order to support schools through the COVID. So I'm very excited about that. But ultimately, many of these decisions are the governor's decisions, and we're going to gather all of that input, just like we have seen across the board, and offer up what we think the best decisions are, based again on science, safety, and our students, not on politics. That's not our responsibility to focus on the political divide that we're seeing in the state. What we want to focus on is science, safety, and students. That's what we're about, and that's what we're going to deliver to the governor, and grateful for all of the input and the thinking that others have had. And we know we have to go much further than what we've seen, even in those recommendations.
When will you be presenting your plan to the governor?
The governor is anticipating bringing forth her plan on June 30th to the public. So we'll be getting it to her before then, as you can imagine.
Wonderful. Tonya Allen, the chairperson of the Michigan Return to Learn Council, also the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation, on with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Just another minute or so before we let you go. I want to give you some time to talk about what is the Skillman Foundation and what kind of work have you been doing there before joining the Michigan Return to Learn Council?
Oh, thank you for that question. The Skillman Foundation is a private foundation. We are an endowed foundation, meaning that we use a percentage of our corpus every year, and we make investments in nonprofits and government entities and organizations who are doing right by children. So we focus predominantly in the Detroit area, but we also look at public policy across the state, because we think if we can serve the children who have the greatest need well, then we are going to serve all children better. And so our focus is predominantly on creating opportunities for our children, making sure they have an opportunity to a high quality education, making sure that they have experiences in their community that really are enriching through a robust after school system. And then the last is to make sure that our young people are ready to engage in this ever-changing economy, and making sure that there are college and career pathways that are clear and precise for young people to be in them, so that when they graduate from high school and from whatever post-secondary experience that they have the opportunity to take care of themselves and lift and lead in their communities.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today. Tonya Allen, the chairperson of the Michigan Return to Learn Council and president of the Skillman Foundation. Anything else you'd like to say before I let you go?
No, I just think that we will all need to do our parts. I would just say that there are going to be parents that have to kind of lean in and make sure that their children are following whatever rules or mandates that come from the governor. That we have to respect and support our educators as they try and keep our school buildings safe and their staff safe. That this is really an opportunity for us not to be divided, that we can't afford to divide our attention or our energy. We really have to have it all unified and focused on doing right for our school children, because of its outsized, because of the impact of with an outsized impact on all of us, even if we don't have children in our school buildings. I mean, in our homes, rather. There's an outsized impact for us on our economy, et cetera. So we have to do this, and we got to do it together. And I think if we all do our part, we're going to be successful. I have every confidence in the citizens in this great state that we can do that, and that we'll do it well, in a way that will make us proud, not just today, but when the generations look back on this moment, they'll say that Michigan did it right.
Well, Tonya, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Tonya Allen, the chairperson of the Michigan Return to Learn Council, also the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation, talking to us about plans to return our kids to school in the fall and what that may look like and what is going into the planning of that. She says around June 30th, the governor will be releasing her plan, so expect the Return to Learn Council's plans to be out there very soon. We'll talk with Dr. James Schwartz, the superintendent of Avondale Schools, about the same issue as we return in a couple of minutes here on the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations.
Hello, I'm Dr. Betty Chu, Chief Quality Officer at Henry Ford Health System, and I'm with Wright Lassiter, Henry Ford Health System's CEO, to talk about coronavirus.
In uncertain times, it's natural to have questions. So I'm going to ask Dr. Chu to answer some of the common ones. First, why can't I visit my grandma to see if she's okay?
Because the elderly are at a higher risk for complications with this disease, and you could inadvertently infect her.
If I'm healthy, why can't I go out with my friends?
The larger the crowd you're exposed to, the higher the chance you could get infected and infect others.
If I have symptoms, why do I have to seek care?
While the disease isn't dangerous for most people, for others it can be. We need to understand how serious your case is. because the right choices save lives. For more information, visit henryford.com or call 313-874-1055.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations all throughout the Oakland County area. On great community TV outlets like Birmingham Area Municipal Access and Civic Center TV. In places like Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, the village of Franklin, and in West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Orchard Lake, and Sylvan Lake. We're also on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff out of Bloomfield Hills, and WAHS 89.5 Avondale Community Radio, a service of Avondale Schools. And joining us now is the superintendent of Avondale Schools, Dr. James Schwartz, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Dr. Schwartz, thank you for being with us today. My apologies for that. We now have your audio on. How are you? How's your team at Avondale Schools?
We're doing well.
That's good to hear.
We're trying to, make our plans, more granular as we get more information.
That's good to hear. The budgets are due for school districts on July 1st. Has Avondale completed their budget for next year? We have, yes. Yep. And how's that looking based on the potential for cuts both to this year's budget and to next year's funding? We've anticipated a $700 per student cut. That's the premise that we've been told it's going to be anywhere from $600 to $800 per student cut. That's been the verbiage coming from Lansing for about the last 4 or 5 weeks, and so we planned our budget to go essentially down the middle, and we've planned for a $700 per student reduction. In terms of how that will impact what's already been spent this year on schools, and also how that's going to bleed over into next year and whatever funds may be available, what's that going to look like? How is this going to directly impact Avondale schools in the immediate? Well, certainly, when you're talking that magnitude of a cut, you're talking, when schools are, budgets are basically 80% or more of your budget is staffing. It's people. And so it results in certainly, reduction of workforce. And so, we've made reductions going into next year from all facets of our school district, from teachers to secretaries to parapros. Administration, we've pared back on positions, and basically we've been fortunate in that it's been through attrition. So folks that have retired or taking leaves in the fall, we've just not replaced those positions. We've absorbed them. We've consolidated some positions. So we're pairing that with what we've built in fund balance to help at least with the first blow of the budget. And in terms of the students in the schools, with cuts being made to positions or positions not being refilled, as you mentioned, in terms of teachers, in terms of paraprofessionals, how's that going to affect the students directly in terms of either class size or extra attention that may be needed for certain students in their learning process? Certainly. Well, we've tried to make the bulk of the cuts the furthest away from the classroom as possible. Usually when you're in the mode of cutting, you try to preserve what you can of the classrooms and the direct student experience. And so, you tend to pare away at services that are outside the classroom first. And so some of that is clerical. But it does leach into some support services. So when you're talking parapros, you're talking, those types of ancillary type staffing. It does begin to leach into affecting the student experience. And it's unfortunate because it's right at the time when you need more, as students are coming back with academic deficits, with socio-emotional deficits, and yet you're trimming those very supports. Because of the lack of state budget.
So, so we've been very cognizant of that and trying to, strategically reduce so as not to dramatically impact, but there will be, an impact to student experience, student support as we start the school year.
In terms of needs and in terms of planning for the next school year, communication's been absolutely critical, and partnership's been absolutely critical between Oakland County and individual school districts, and even in partnership between certain school districts. How has that impacted Avondale schools and their planning and in their plans for the fall? And how critical is collaboration between our local school districts going to be in the execution of plans for all of them in the fall?
Yeah, it's very critical, and we, the 28 superintendents in the county, we have regular meetings where we're touching base with each other collectively as a 28 district group. And then we're also in collaboration with our neighbor districts, individually, and looking at planning scenarios, with whatever guidance we have coming to us. So, we've been careful to be in conversation with each other as we're looking at anything from schedules, or scheduling concepts for the fall down to, PPE and what the PPE materials and protocols will be or could be, down to how many kids on a bus, social distancing guidelines. So, there's so many components to this that, and yet we're waiting for the ultimate guidance to get really granular on these plans. And so it'll be interesting when the governor releases her protocols and her guidelines next week. I think everybody is bracing themselves for what information is coming in those plans.
Absolutely. And Dr. James Schwartz, superintendent of Avondale Schools, we just had previously before you Tonya Allen, the chairperson of the Michigan Return to Learn Council, on with us to talk about that. And among the issues that were brought up and were talked about in bulk was the access to technology. And you've mentioned it before. You said it yourself before, and she kind of paraphrased that and alluded to something similar that you said in a previous interview, where you had said access to technology and computers now is as vital as a pencil and a piece of paper for these students, and especially in these times where we're not entirely certain that school is going to be in person in full in the fall or even beyond that going forward. And we are certain that if that is the case, technology in the form of internet access, in the form of devices, and access to these special programs for each of these school districts is going to be absolutely critical. In terms of bridging that technology gap, is Avondale going to be able to support students that are not in families that have access to the internet or have access to these devices going forward long term?
So we are. I mean, and it's a work in progress. Certainly we went through a learning experience with the remote, the remote period that we just ended at the end of the school year here. So we were able to reflect upon our experiences there with devices and connectivity and preparing ourselves, obviously, to be flexible in the event that we have to go back to a system where we are entirely remote again. And I believe to be in what the governor is going to be coming out with certainly is expectations for schools to have plans that will meet each of the various phases the 6 phases that are set up in the state plan for reopening. So that if you're on stage 4, like we are now, and there happens to be a resurgence in your particular area and you have to slide back to stage 3, that you have plans as a school district available for meeting the needs of stage 3 and so on. And so we're working as districts to plan accordingly to have flexible plans that allow us to shift, basically at a moment's notice to slide back into a remote type setting. And so the devices, the connectivity is a huge piece of that. And so, our particular situation was such that we could afford to provide families, 1 device per family. And of course that creates some complications if you have more than one child, and you're vying for, a computer access at the same time. And so, we're gradually building our reserves to meet more of those needs as we go. And certainly some of our COVID monies that we've received is helping to assist in providing additional devices and connectivity for those families so that we can, in the future, go more than just one device per family.
Put the budget aside, how do you teach young kids social distancing and to wear a mask in a classroom?
Yeah, those are protocols that we will be addressing as we approach what we're planning to be the first day of school. So we will be having lessons because we need to teach the students. We can't assume that they're getting that from home. So we will be teaching the students about the proper protocols, about mask wearing, temperature taking, all of the new protocols that will be in place as school starts, because school in session will look vastly different than school in session back in February did. So, and so we need to be intentional in instructing students, how we walk in the hallways, when we wear a mask, how we wear a mask, hand washing, temperature taking. All of those things we have to be very intentional about instructing and also monitoring. So it becomes, a part of the culture. It's going to be the new part of the in-school culture. So we have to be deliberate about that instruction. And so those are in our plans for those first couple days of school as we have students.
How much of an additional stress is this going to be for the teachers? Will they be the ones responsible for making sure those measures are being followed?
Certainly, in part, they're going to have to be. All school staff is frankly going to have to be involved in the monitoring and setting the examples and in the instructing of those safety protocols.
Dr. James Schwartz, the superintendent of Avondale Schools, with us on the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations, as well as the Facebook page of Birmingham Bloomfield's Chamber of Commerce, our Facebook partner today, live with us all throughout the show. Dr. Schwartz, you were recently on a town hall, Representative Brenda Carter's K-12 education experience town hall with a number of other superintendents in the local area, and one topic that came up was, what do you do in terms of when you have distance learning in place, either a day where everyone's learning remotely or you have to take a virtual day for one reason or another, and you have a situation where parents are back at work, they're not going to be at home, they're not going to be able to supervise their kids. Pontiac Superintendent Kelly Williams mentioned partnerships within the Pontiac community and organizations that will take those kids in for the day and help monitor them so that their parents are not having to worry about childcare on top of how their child's going to be educated on those virtual days. Any plans of the like in communication or already set in place in Avondale schools?
So in terms of the remoteness, we are looking at our staffing models to see how we can incorporate that in-house. We don't have the type of community organizations that Pontiac has that they've been fortunate to tap into. So we're going to be looking in-house in terms of how we assist with that, with the structure of the day. And again, we haven't gotten to where we're announcing any type of granularity with that yet, because we're still waiting for some of the final details to come out from, the governor's plan and so on, before we go public with any granularity. But we're certainly looking at those types of scenarios. And again, we're not going to be able to meet everybody's needs. No one is in these circumstances, but we certainly want to be able to meet the needs of the majority, the masses. You're always going to have the isolate type of situations that you're not going to be able to meet. But we're trying the best that we can to meet the most that we can.
Dr. James Schwartz, just another couple minutes with you before we have to let you go. Another thing that's on a lot of people's minds and a lot of school districts' minds going forward is what is the sports landscape going to look like in the fall? School athletics are a huge part, especially at the middle school and the high school level, for the experience of the kids and their learning both inside and outside the classroom, as well as their social learning as well in the school. In terms of what we are looking at for athletics at Avondale High School in the fall, anything that's not going to be in place as opposed to normal, or there just different rules and regulations that the school district's putting in place for its athletics teams as they begin to practice?
Right. So we have practices that are going on right now, and they're certainly following all of the MHSAA guidelines. That's the Michigan High School Athletic Association guidelines, and with social distancing, with the wearing of masks. So right now we've got some football conditioning that's going on, and it seems to be going just fine. And the kids are respecting those protocols, which is great. We're getting a lot of cooperation from students and from parents alike. I expect that MHSAA will be giving further guidance for high school athletics as we get into the month of July, particularly if there's any phase changes in the return to school, or the return to normalcy plan of the governors. So we'll be anticipating further guidance with that. But I do suspect that we will go into the fall, with sports being played. I don't know which sports yet. I mean, there's some rumor mill that we may have a flip-flop where we may have spring sports done in the fall and fall sports done in the spring. Those that are more contact laden, like football, may be a spring sport, whereas baseball may come in as a fall sport. So these are things that MHSAA right now is grappling with. And I do expect that there will be a limitation on spectators in terms of what is allowed with in attendance at games, following social distancing and mask wearing and all of those things. So we're certainly prepared for those. Again, we're just waiting for that guidance, but all of those components have been in discussions of ours.
Dr. Schwartz, we thank you for being with us. Anything else before we have to let you go?
No, not at this time. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, always a pleasure to have you on with us. Dr. James Schwartz, the superintendent of Avondale Schools, with us on the Oakland County Megacast on this Wednesday morning in and across Oakland County on television stations like Birmingham Area Municipal Access, Civic Center TV, and on radio stations like 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, and WAHS 89.5 Avondale Community Radio. Out in the field, we have our own Erica Jones standing by. She is in the local area at one of our local businesses. Erica, where are you at the moment? Erica, are you with us? All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll come back with Erica in just a moment. You are watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations. We will return shortly.
Coronavirus has put us to the test. Now it's time to put it to the test. We've greatly expanded testing in Michigan. So people who think they may have COVID-19 with symptoms like fever, cough, and shortness of breath can get tested. And those without symptoms who work in public can now get tested, as they could carry the virus. Start by calling your healthcare provider or contacting a testing site near you. Learn more at michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl, and now we do have Erica Jones out in the field with us. Erica, where are you at today?
Hey, Tyler, I'm at English Gardens on Orchard Lake Road, where they are seeing a drastic increase in sales this year. I was just talking to Marissa, one of the sales associates, and she told me that for the first time since 2014, they're having days where they're having over $100,000 in sales. And she said normally they would have that, in 2014 when it happened, they would have a day like that maybe once a season, and it's already happened multiple times this season. So people are getting out there, planting flowers, patio furniture, and it's just a great way for more outdoor activities. So again, like we see with the fireworks, sales are just increasing because people are looking for new, different ways of entertainment. So it's also great because most of the store is outside here, so you can come for flower shopping, and it's just a great activity. Also, they normally in August, near the end of the season, she was telling me, will do a 50% off sale. But even then, they don't sell out of stuff, and they normally have to, move some of the product till the next season even. But this year, they started the 50% off sale immediately after lockdown, and they are already sold out of most products. So what you see out here is what you get. Sales have just been through the roof this year like never before.
What is the what is how, in terms of how busy it is there? I mean, imagine they have these big sales days and that they rarely have in a regular year. In terms of how many people are there at a given time, do they have social distancing measures in place that you're seeing there? Are they requiring masks and so on?
Yeah. So even as you can see, I'm outside right now, and like I said, a large amount of the store is outside. But they still do have signs that say even when you're in the outdoor area, you are required to wear a mask. And then not quite where I am right now, but in the inside of the store, they do have markers on the floor for social distancing. But because the store is so large with all the outside area, I don't think it's as much of a concern with how many people they let in because it never gets too crowded. However, they do have separate entrance and exit doors that they normally don't have to ensure that people are only coming in and out of one direction to avoid too much close contact person to person. So yes, there are definitely lots of measures put in place to ensure people's safety around here.
Well, always interesting to see how different retailers and different outlets throughout the community are enforcing these different regulations and keeping their areas safe and their customers safe as well. Erica, anything else from out in the field from you?
Not today, just crazy sales. So if you want flowers, get out soon before they're all gone.
Well, thank you very much for being with us, Erica. Erica Jones out at English Gardens in the local area with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We're going to take another just quick break, and hopefully when we come back, we'll have our next guest, Mayor Deirdre Waterman from the city of Pontiac, on with us to talk about her upcoming State of the City address, as well as some construction projects upcoming in the city and the city's partnership with city organization's partnership with Oakland County in terms of COVID-19 testing. Then, to cap off the show today, we'll talk with Ryan Taylor, the owner of Power Dance Company in West Bloomfield Township. You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will return after this quick break.
We know that we're asking Americans to do a lot right now. So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible to this virus.
A question I often get asked is, why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
Social distancing is really physical separation of people.
It's what we refer to when we ask people to stay at least 6 feet apart.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
We all have a role to play in preventing person-to-person spread of this disease, which can be deadly for vulnerable groups. For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations all throughout the local area. Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studio of our flagship radio station, 89.3 Lakes FM, as well as Civic Center TV, located at a Green Media Center on the campus of Chico Elementary School in West Bloomfield Township. We're still awaiting Mayor Deirdre Waterman from the city of Pontiac to connect with us, but in the meantime, our next guest is connected. We have Ryan Taylor joining us now, the owner of Power Dance Company in West Bloomfield Township, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Ryan, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you guys so much for having me today.
Yeah, glad to have you with us. I'm doing well. How's your team at Power Dance Company been during the pandemic?
It has been a roller coaster. So for us, we found out about the pandemic around March 15th, which was literally 2 days before our second regional event. Like, we've been preparing for competition since last summer. We were able to compete at the end of February, and 2 nights before our second regional competition, the pandemic kind of happened. So we were kind of thrusted into a territory of unknown. So through lots of help through other studio owners across the country via social media, I was able to figure out about Zoom, which ended up working out so good for me and my students. And we've done Zoom lessons from March 15th until yesterday. We had our auditions for our 6th season yesterday. So we've been going strong for about 15 weeks now through Zoom, and it's been a great experience for us.
That's good to hear. And for those unfamiliar, Ryan, Power Dance Company, is that a dance studio for dance lessons? Is it just a competitive team? What does Power Dance Company provide?
So Power Dance Company is an elite competitive program. So my studio is 95% based competitive teams. We're dancers who want to get that elite training and go to elite level competitions and have all the different experiences within the dance industry come to my studio. So we're fairly small. We're about a team of 60. And then we do have a recreational program for dancers ages 3 to 8. And that's kind of like less commitment. They come 1 hour a week, learn the basics of dance, kind of fall in love with dance. So then when they get older, they want to be a part of that competitive experience.
And during the pandemic, it's got to be tough. And you even mentioned that in-person dancing and dance lessons and practicing and rehearsals and so on, it's virtually impossible, no pun intended, because you can't be with each other. You have to switch to virtual. How does that even work?
Well, we kind of had to teach the kids about their mindset and not to let go of their goals. Because I feel like a lot of kids, they feed off of that social interaction. Social media is like popping now, and everything is so interactive. And for us, we're such a tight-knit family. And it was kind of hard at first because I think the kids understood and realized that all of the hard work that we've been doing from June of 2019 till March of 2020 kind of got washed away because there was no way we would be able to get on stage and compete. But me and my staff, I have a great staff. We're all under the age of 30, so we're all super young. And we kind of wanted to tell them, like, listen, this is just another hump in the road that we're all going to get over together. Like, we're only as strong as kind of our weakest person. And if we all keep that same mindset of our goals and things we want to accomplish for our season, whether we get on stage or not, that's all that I wanted as their mentor, as their teacher, and as their leader. So it was rough, but we made it.
So just a little behind the scenes look at our operation here for those watching and listening to us on TV and on the radio and on the Facebook page of the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce today. Ronnie and I were talking about this before the show. We're trying to think of how do you as a dance company, as a dance team, compete in a competition together when you're not in person. Is it something where you're all on one Zoom call and you're all on different cameras and somehow are staying in sync, or are you in multiple different places and in groups trying to keep your dance going? How does that even logistically work?
Logistically, there's 2 ways. So for class, it's literally the kids are at home. A lot of the parents transform their basements or their garages, or the kids like redecorated their bedrooms and bought portable bars and portable dance floors to turn their bedrooms or their living spaces into our classroom. So we would have our normal daily schedule. We start at 4:30 every day with ballet. The kids will pull out their bar and we'll train them literally just how we're doing it through Zoom, and I can see everybody on their screen and be able to spotlight their video and give them corrections. But for competing, what we were able to do, a lot of the competitions in our industry offered us virtual options to compete online. And what they required was a video footage from a previous competition. So luckily for us, we competed at the end of February, and I had all of those videos from that competition. So I was able to submit those to online competitions, and judges from across the country would judge our routines from their homes. They would watch our video from that February competition, send us critiques, and then they would rank us up against other studios that have submitted their videos from all across the country as well. So it was kind of like a fun experience, and they would live stream it on YouTube or from their websites, and all of our families would get online and watch from home, and we'd have Zoom parties, and grandma got on her Power Dance Company t-shirt, and we're all clapping together, and still trying to have that family-like competitive experience this season, even though it got cut short for us.
Very interesting to hear Ryan Taylor, the owner of Power Dance Company in West Bloomfield, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. A lot of parks organizations, a lot of summer camps, a lot of school districts are canceling their summer programs for kids or even for adult recreation as well. Is that the case at Power Dance Company, or do you have programs still going on in person and virtually over the summer?
We are ready to get back into business as soon as Governor Whitmore allows us to move into phase 5, which we are planning to open July 13th. If that does go for us, we've taken the proper protocols to make sure all of our families will be safe. We bought medical grade purifiers for each of our dance studios to clean the air for our dancers, to suck in that bad air and release the good air. We have them in our dressing rooms. We have them in our lobby. We have put in mounted hand sanitizer stations. We will be doing temperature checks at the door. We have done our research about masks, and we've seen that with elevated exercise, masks aren't necessarily healthy for dancers or people that are going to be doing strenuous activities. So we are limiting our class sizes this year. And what I can say is I will shout out my mother right now because I know she's watching. Hi, Mom. My mom is super clean. She is a clean freak. Our studio stays clean. So my mom has already established that she will work from home. She works for St. John Providence Hospital, and she says she will work from home for the safety of our kids, and she is going to be the cleanup lady with her Lysol and her bleach, cleaning all our dance rooms every day for us. So we are ready to open back up and ready to take all of those cute little faces to keep the creativity going, because that's what we want to see. We want to see the arts continue through our youth. So we're ready.
Yeah, that's fantastic news. I was curious, what are you going to do in terms of the in-person studio between classes? Is there going to be a larger separation of time, or are you going to take one day you'll have classes, the next day you won't, to make sure you do a deep clean? How's that going to work with Power Dance Company?
So I think that's still kind of in the works for us, just because there's no handbook to figure all of this out. But I think the goal, since we're a very small studio, is to kind of do it by age groupings on each day. Most of the time we have no more than 10 kids in our class sizes anyways. But in between classes, we do have steam mops that will steam mop all of our floors. Our staff will be responsible for wiping down all the bars. And then me and myself, my mom, Miss Pat, and myself will come in at the start of each day, clean down everything. And like I said, my mom's a clean freak anyways. So it's kind of been in our nature to clean all the time, every day. So we're going to try to do our best to make sure that we keep our families and our students safe through this pandemic.
So gyms in Michigan are scheduled to be permitted to reopen tomorrow, Thursday, June 25th. I'm not an expert on what classification dance companies are. Are you included in those gyms? Have you been open already before tomorrow's date? Or are you classified in that? When are you going to reopen your studio?
I think we do classify as some type of indoor fitness facility. We classify as indoor fitness. So I know they can open up tomorrow. We will not. We will open up in phase 5, which I think that was the governor's original plan for gyms anyways. Yeah. So I'm going to stick to that just because I'm dealing with children of all ages 3 to 18. So I'm going to kind of stick to my July date. We haven't been back in the building for classes, but last Thursday, to celebrate the end of season 5, because our recital did get canceled. We normally have our recital at Wall Lake Central High School, and with the pandemic, that did get canceled for us. So we did have a little in-house celebration out in our back parking lot where we had the Little Donut Factory, that is a brand new food truck that does fried donuts and frozen lemonade. And I brought all the kids in, and we kind of partied outside and got to see each other for the first time in 12 weeks. So that was nice to see them. But for in-person lessons, and for those that aren't comfortable with being in person, we will continue Zoom through the summer starting July 13th.
Ryan Taylor, the owner of Power Dance Company in West Bloomfield, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Just a couple more minutes with you. So before I let you go, really interesting all that you're doing for virtual dance, for competition, and good to hear the steps that your company is taking to keep its facility clean as well. For those that are interested in getting into dance, or for those that are interested in getting their kids into dance programs, how can they get in contact with you? Where are you located?
Yes, we are located at 3160 Haggerty Road at the crossroads of Pontiac Trail and Haggerty, inside the West Bloomfield Tech Center, suite letter F. They can go to our website, which is www.powerdanceco.com. They can check us out on Facebook at Power Dance Company, and they can check us out on Instagram at Power Dance Company.
Well, Ryan, thank you very much for being with us today. Anything else you'd like to say before I let you go?
I do want to say, because I think I have some parents and some students watching, I am super proud of all of you guys and all of the hard work that you guys put in this year. Season 6 is going to be lit, and I cannot wait to see all of you and hopefully see some new faces join our PDC family this year.
Well, wonderful to talk to you, Ryan. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ryan Taylor, she is the owner of Power Dance Company in West Bloomfield. Ronnie, really interesting to hear, again, from another company in the local area, what they're doing to keep their facilities clean, what they've been doing during the pandemic to pivot from their normal operations and still, in this case, maintain a really fun, really open, and really friendly environment that people can learn and engage in something that they're really interested in.
If you can Zoom dance, you can pretty much do anything, right?
I would think so. I wouldn't have thought that was something that could be done before Ryan told us.
A lot of people don't understand these dance companies and these cheer companies are extremely competitive, and there's so much practice and a lot of time that goes into these competitions, and it really is a good learning tool for the kids that get involved in these. Just like sports, this is a form of a sporting activity as well, which is great for the development of the kids, to teach them teamwork and also discipline. There's a lot of discipline that goes into that. So the fact that they were able to keep that going via Zoom throughout this pandemic is great. It's really great.
It is, and it's good to hear from Ryan and her team that they're emphasizing safety, and they're emphasizing social distancing and cleanliness. And it's also good to hear that they know they have the opportunity to reopen tomorrow, and they have that license, and they can do that if they so choose, because they're classified under gyms and some personal services, but that they're taking caution, saying we're not ready. Some gym, that's not to knock other gyms and other facilities that may be ready to open right now, and may have been thought that they were ready weeks ago and are excited to go tomorrow, but rather to say we're not ready yet, and until we're absolutely ready to do this right and do this safe, we're going to stay on the sidelines, continue to do what we're doing, and make sure we get our processes right. I think it's safe, and I think it's the best responsible thing that a lot of companies have been doing and should be encouraged to continue doing.
Right, because the worst thing is to open and then discover that you're not ready and have to dial it back and then close again. So do it right the first time and keep your doors open.
Absolutely. So we just have a couple more minutes left in today's program, Ronnie, before we have to say so long for the afternoon. But before we go, I want to remind you again, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We have information on the latest news. We update this on the daily, and also have access to resources from the Centers for Disease Control, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and many of the municipalities in our local coverage area. So go to civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where you can see all of that, get access to all that important information and the latest news before, during, and after our show each and every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. You can also go to civiccentertv.com/megacast. And if you missed an interview, if you came in halfway through and you liked what they were saying, you listened to watched Tonya Allen talking about the Michigan Return to Learn Council and how we're going to educate our kids in the fall. You want to see the full interview? Go to civiccentertv.com/megacast and click on full interviews. You can also watch short clips for the best and most important information from each of these episodes, or watch the entire show by clicking on watch full episodes, and we usually have those on our website very quickly, within a few hours after the end of our program. So for our guests, Joe Bauman from the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce, Ernie Birchmeyer from the Michigan Farm Bureau, Tonya Allen from the Michigan Return to Learn Council and the Skillman Foundation, Dr. James Schwartz, and Ryan Taylor from Power Dance Company in West Bloomfield. Ronnie and I thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow on the Oakland County Megacast, and we thank you for joining us today. Have a good Wednesday in Oakland County.